and here is the Artist's Almanac for February 23rd, 2018. It's the birthday of George Frideric Handel, born in Halle, Germany in 1685. Handel was a German and later British Baroque composer who spent the bulk of his career in London, becoming well known for his operas, oratorios, anthems, and organ concertos. Handel received important training in Halle and worked as a composer in Hamburg and Italy before settling in London in 1712, eventually becoming a naturalized British subject in 1727. Within 15 years, Handel had started 3 commercial opera companies to supply the English nobility with Italian opera. Musicologist Winton Dean writes that his operas show that Handel was not only a great composer, he was a dramatic genius of the first order. Handel eventually made the transition to English choral works with his ode Alexander's Feast of 1736. After his success with Messiah in 1742, Handel would never compose an Italian opera again. Born the same year as Johann Sebastian Bach and Domenico Scarlatti, Handel is regarded as one of the greatest composers of the Baroque era, with works such as Water Music, Music for the Royal Fireworks, and Messiah remaining steadfastly popular. One of his 4 coronation anthems, Zadok the Priest, composed for the coronation of George II, has been performed at every subsequent British coronation, traditionally during the sovereign's anointing. Another of his English oratorios, Solomon, has also remained popular, and the Sinfonia that opens Act 3, known more commonly as The Arrival of the Queen of Sheba, was featured at the 2012 London Olympics opening ceremony. Handel composed more than 40 operas in over 30 years, and since the late 1960s, with a revival of Baroque music and historically informed musical performance, interest in Handel's music continues to grow. After having lived in England for nearly 50 years, Friedrich Handel died in 1759, a respected and wealthy Englishman. He was given full state honors at his funeral before being buried in Westminster Abbey. He was 74 years old. It's also the birthday of W.E.B. Du Bois, born in 1868, Massachusetts. Du Bois was an American sociologist, historian, civil rights activist, author, writer, and editor. Born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, Du Bois grew up in a relatively tolerant and integrated community, and after completing graduate work at the University of Berlin and Harvard, where he was the first Black American to earn a doctorate, he became a professor of history, sociology, and economics at Atlanta University. Du Bois was one of the co-founders of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People in 1909. Du Bois rose to national prominence as the leader of the Niagara Movement, a group of African American activists who wanted equal rights for blacks. Du Bois and his supporters opposed the Atlanta Compromise, an agreement crafted by Booker T. Washington, which provided that Southern blacks would work and submit to white political rule, while Southern whites guaranteed that blacks would receive basic educational and economic opportunities. Instead, Du Bois insisted on full civil rights and increased political representation, which he believed would be brought about by the African American intellectual elite. He referred to this group as the Talented Tenth, and believed that African Americans needed the chance for advanced education to develop its leadership. Racism was the main target of Du Bois's polemics and stood up against lynching, Jim Crow laws, and discrimination in education and employment. His cause included people of color everywhere, particularly Africans and Asians in colonies. He was a proponent of Pan-Africanism and helped organize several Pan-African congresses to fight for the independence of African colonies from European powers. Du Bois made several trips to Europe, Africa, and Asia, and after World War I, he surveyed the experiences of American black soldiers in France and documented widespread prejudice in the United States military. Du Bois was a prolific author. His collection of essays, The Souls of Black Folk, was a seminal work in African American literature. And his 1935 magnum opus, Black Reconstruction in America, challenged the prevailing theory that blacks were responsible for the failures of the Reconstruction era. Borrowing a phrase from Frederick Douglass, he popularized the use of the term color line to represent the injustice of the separate but equal doctrine prevalent in American social and political life. He wrote one of the first scientific treatises in the field of American sociology, and he published 3 autobiographies, each of which contains insightful essays on sociology, politics, and history. Du Bois believed that capitalism was a primary cause of racism, and he was generally sympathetic to socialist causes throughout his life, and was an ardent peace activist and advocated nuclear disarmament. The United States Civil Rights Act, embodying many of the reforms for which Du Bois had campaigned his entire life, was enacted a year after his death. W.E.B. Du Bois died in his adopted homeland of Ghana, just one day before Martin Luther King Jr. delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech at the March on Washington. W.E.B. Du Bois was 95 years old when he died. Thanks for listening. Be kind, do good work, and until next time.